after 41 months in court and a lot of money spent on legal fees, I want to finally talk about my ordeal in the hands of the Economics and Financial Crimes Commission, known as the EFCC. This is a video I've always wanted to make. It's a story that has haunted me for the last 3 years. I'm glad I finally found the courage to share this with you. My aim of doing this is to start a conversation about this very powerful government agency. Perhaps we can look to have a government oversight because they are beginning to act like the rogue police unit we fought so hard against 2 years ago. Now, I found YouTube in my final year in the university. A very good friend of mine had trusted me enough to invest in my first ever attempt at entrepreneurship. We started a restaurant business together, and it was all fun in the beginning. We were redefining what food business was in the university. But the sad truth was, we weren't making any money. The idea was making food deliveries on campus. No one was doing this at the time, and even with the little resources we had, the operation was going well. The business was taking its toll on me, no doubt. I was literally working around the clock, but I enjoyed it. Every bit of it was fun for me. However, working so hard and having no money to show for it was frustrating for me as well. My friend, on the other hand, was having a good time. He was literally bankrolling me at this point. So one day, I sat myself down and decided to learn whatever it was my friend was doing to earn himself money. This was when I was introduced to YouTube. When I created my first YouTube channel, I didn't know what I was doing. Everything was strange. No idea how to tell a story, not to talk of camera or editing. So after a few days, I quit. But hunger brought me back. This time, I decided to learn by copying. I literally copied whatever my friend was doing on the platform. And it worked. The channel blew up. The numbers were crazy. It makes me want to cry when I check my current view count and start to compare to those times when it was just re-uploaded content, Anyways, the channel is no more, so don't ask me why I'm not uploading there anymore. As my channel blew up, so did my social status. I got a car, bought properties, and after graduating, I got married to my secondary school love. Yeah, I can see this one. But before our wedding, we started another business. This time, a supermarket. The business was doing well, and this was when I decided maybe it was time I invested in media. I started a brand called BTV, hired a few wonderful people, and surrounded by friends, we thought we were going to make it big. But to me, something was missing. I wanted to create this buzz around what we were doing. So after speaking with a few friends, I started a challenge called the 1 million naira challenge, where people would discuss and debate on a certain topic. We would select a winner who will become 1 million naira richer. This to me was a way of giving back. I thought I was helping my community. I thought I was doing something great. Well, that's my story, or part of it. But what happened next unraveled my whole experience and threw me into a dungeon where I've stayed for over 3 years. It was 8 a.m. on the 8th of March 2019. I had worked all through the night, so getting up early wasn't in my plans that day. But my phone had other ideas. When the phone rang that morning, I was angry I didn't put it off before going to bed. But when I saw the name of the caller, my eyes brightened up. It was from the bank. I was wondering what could be so important that they were calling me that early. Well, the message quickly changed my mood. "Do you have a quarrel with anyone?" the caller asked. I hesitantly said no, because I didn't know where this was going. "Have you exchanged words with anyone recently? Please think carefully." Those were the words of the caller. So I asked what was going on, and this was the moment I was informed that the EFCC has ordered all the banks to freeze my account and to arrest me should I visit any of the branches. I woke my wife, who was sleeping peacefully beside me, and I said to her, "Babe, there's trouble. We had just started construction on a property and a payment was due for the contractor. Now I can't access any of my accounts." I placed the call through to my lawyer and told him to expect me. And when I got to his office, narrated the whole information I had just received to him, he was angry and he asked me, "What do you want to do?" I told him I wanted to go to the office that same day and confront whoever gave that order to freeze my account. I wasn't going to run from a fight knowing I did nothing wrong. But he advised against it because that was on a weekend and he didn't want anything that would make me spend a night there. But I didn't listen. So I went home, printed all my payment slips from Google AdSense, got all my documents together, and I went to see another lawyer. But she too said the same thing. She wanted us to pay them a visit on Monday morning. So after a few consultations, I followed her counsel and we waited. It was the longest weekend of my entire life. My temperature rose, my blood pressure was rising as well. I questioned myself time and again. So many thoughts flashed through my mind. I remembered asking myself if it was possible to have committed a financial crime without knowing it. This was the beginning of my trauma. I couldn't wait till 8 a.m. on Monday morning. I wanted all this to be done and over with so I could return to my normal life. Little did I know that this was my new normal. When I woke up that morning, I didn't want to drive myself that day, so I called the manager of my supermarket and told him to come drive us to the EFCC zonal headquarters. He was already aware of the situation, so they had instructions not to open the business until this was sorted. After kissing my wife goodbye, we drove to my lawyer's residence where we picked her up and off we went to the EFCC's office. This was my first time in any form of police office. I had seen movies where people were interrogated by law enforcement and never in my entire life had I imagined it would be that tough and tense. My lawyer told me repeatedly to relax and just tell them the truth about what I do. So I did. When we first got there, I saw some familiar faces from the banks. 3 of them, and I greeted them because they all knew me at this point. I didn't think it was any of my business what they had come to do at the EFCC. After all, they were a financial institution and this is the agency in charge of financial crimes. So I didn't read any meaning to what was going on. But there was more to it. I think I should have known because my lawyer whom I have come with to defend myself also represents one of the big banks that had frozen my accounts. In fact, one of our associates from her law firm was there that morning with some documents from the bank. I had no idea how connected it all was. When the EFCC officials started questioning me, they seemed friendly at first. They said they wanted to know me, but the more I told them about myself and the business I was into, the more questions they seemed to have. They were just never satisfied, and it was surprising to me. This was when it occurred to me that these guys were fishing for something. Thinking about it now, I regret telling them anything at all because if they had something incriminating on me, they would have said so. We were there answering questions for over 5 hours. I got tired and I told them I wanted to go home. This was when they brought out a file and told me to write my statement and that anything and everything I said could be used against me in court. So I said, whoa, what the hell is going on here? Am I being charged with some crimes? It was at this point the investigating officer said that they were investigating me for fraud and money laundering and that I will have to cooperate with them so they can help me. He said they had obtained an order to remand me in prison, but before that, they would love to go search my house for more evidence. I was boiling inside. I was terrified. I had no words to say. At this moment, he brought out the documents that my banks had submitted to them that morning. It was at this moment it made sense to me. Like, my banks were here just this morning with all of these papers, and now they were in on all of this. They wouldn't let me make a call. They just drove me in their van with guns to my house like I was some criminal they were taking to prison. While in my house, I insisted on searching their pockets before letting them in. I told them I didn't trust them and I believed they were trying to frame me. So they agreed. After searching them, they turned everything upside down. Went through my wife's undies. It was embarrassing and humiliating. My neighbors stared at me like a criminal who had been busted at last. My lawyer couldn't stop any of that. She was shocked as the EFCC kept insisting that they were acting within their right. After taking my documents and other properties, including my MacBook, my email password, and logins on my YouTube channels, we returned to the EFCC's office where I was detained and locked up in their cell. The first night was horrifying, lonely, and the most depressing moment of my life. I spent the best part of the night questioning God. It was my darkest time. I woke up the next morning before the cock crowed. Even though I had slept late, mosquitoes wouldn't let me. And when it was 8 in the morning, the investigating officer came for me and they took me for more interrogations. This time, my lawyer didn't come. Instead, she sent her associate that accompanied one of the banks to deliver my account statements earlier to the agency. I was angry. Are they in on this? I asked myself silently. When the panel of 4 started bombarding me with questions left and right and all sorts of intimidation, the lawyer guy stood there like he was their witness. I felt I was all alone, convicted already for a crime I know nothing about. It was at this point I asked them, "What exactly do you want from me?" And one of them said, "We want your gang and we are going to bring your friends in. If you help us, we'll let you out." I was stunned, angry, and filled with rage. What has my friends got to do with this? I have no gang. This is YouTube, for crying out loud. You don't need a gang to make YouTube videos. I tried to protest, but the lawyer guy said nothing. He just stood there and told me to go along with them, that they already have the names of my friends. At this moment, I remembered that I had talked about my friend who helped me out in the beginning of my YouTube journey. I felt stupid for dragging my friends into all of this. But the investigating officer kept promising me that they were just going to ask them few questions to verify all I had told them. So they called them in. But when they came, thinking they were coming to help me out, they got locked up too. They too were deceived into putting down statements with no lawyer on our side to help us out. When I saw what was going on, I called for my dad to come as soon as he could. We started fighting for bail, but every attempt was knocked back. The zonal head told the investigating officer and my lawyer that he was ready to teach me a lesson. For what? I don't know till this day. On the 3rd day, my first lawyer, who had advised me against going to the EFCC's office in the first place, he came to see me. I narrated everything to him and he told me I was being manipulated and that these guys are up to something. This was when we decided not to engage in any further conversation or answer any of your questions. I played along with the lawyer who was working with the bank. This time, I began working with my first lawyer. Another motion was immediately filed for bail, but it was denied. But on the 4th day, after much pleading and intervention from highly placed people, our bail was finally granted. When I got to my house, I cried like a baby. The 4 days I spent inside were like hell for me. I thought about my friends, what they must be feeling towards me for dragging them into this. It was all painful for me to imagine. A few days after being granted bail, I kept getting intimidated by the EFCC's agents. They would call at odd hours, summoning me for questioning on things I had already told them about. I called the lawyer who had accompanied me there and she sounded so uninterested. It was like I was disturbing her. When I tried to complain that I was less than satisfied with the way her associate had handled things during those intense interrogations, she flared up. There was a statement she made that stayed with me. She said, "I'm only trying to help you. After all, I didn't know you were making all these huge sums of money. That I would have defended you if you had told me everything." I was like, "Excuse you? If I had told you everything, whose side are you on? Do you think I actually committed those crimes they were saying I did?" It was at this moment that a lot of things started to come together for me. What have I gotten myself into? I asked quietly as she kept talking. But when I couldn't take it anymore, I dropped the call. I immediately placed a call through to my brother and told him, "Bro, we're on our own. We need a new lawyer." While I was here speaking with my brother, the EFCC called again and said they wanted to bring my wife in to answer some more questions. Immediately I heard that, I shouted at the officer on the phone and I told him it's not happening. "What do you want from me?" I told them there was no way I would let my wife come in there on a Friday for questions. If they can't wait till Monday, they should come and arrest me. And I hung up the phone and called out to the lawyer that had fought to get me released on bail. I apologized to him for not listening to him in the first place and told him he needed to get me and my wife out of the house as soon as possible. I felt threatened. These guys were coming for me with guns like I was some armed criminal. The town wasn't safe for me anymore, so we went into hiding for 3 days. I spent the weekend out of sight, and while away, we started plotting our response. I was tired of playing defensive, so I wanted to attack them. The weekend quickly passed and I took my wife to the office where they asked her to verify everything I had told them. She penned down her statements and we left. As the week rolled on, I called my lawyer and told him if they won't take me to court, I will take them. This was when we filed a lawsuit against the EFCC and 3 giant banks that had frozen my account. On arrival at the office of this zonal head, he gave me that look of someone who was out to get you. Like, my lawyer asked him, what else do you need before you can release his properties since you are not charging him to court? His reply was, we are still investigating, that they will take their time to do whatever they wanted to do. I had thought the court case would be quick and easy, but I was in for the shock of my life. We were faced with adjournment after adjournment. The EFCC told the court that I was making a lot of money, that I couldn't defend the source. And according to them, at my age, my bank activities were suspicious. It was ridiculous, but that wasn't the one that got me. One of the banks said the EFCC was right to have flagged my account and that they too, as my bank, felt the activities on my account were suspicious and that I will have to prove to them that I wasn't into fraud. I was mad listening to all of this. I was burning within me, but my lawyer kept telling me to calm down and remain silent. After each court hearing, I would get calls from friends and people advising not to go against the system. Some said it would drain me and that the cost would crumble me, but I didn't back down. During those tough times, I felt very lonely and sad, and some cunning players tried to take advantage. First, it was an agent from the EFCC's office visiting me in my house and advising me to settle out of court. He said there was no way I could win a lawsuit against them. I listened passively and appreciated his concern, but the next one to come shocked me. I was approached by a so-called pastor who said he had people higher up there that would talk with the zonal head and force his hands. According to this man, all I had to do was tip the men something from my funds that were held up and that they would jump into action for me. So I asked him if he was advising me to really go out there and bribe someone, a pastor. And he said no, that it was just like an appreciation. I told him I would think about it. Then I called my lawyer and asked him, are you sure we can win this thing? And he said, yes, except if there was something I was hiding from him. I told him of the conversations I was getting and how different people were picking interest in the matter. I didn't want their attention and he promised to deal with it. But the next day, I got a call from a man who claimed he was working at the EFCC's headquarters in Abuja and that they have heard about my case. He claimed he was one of those guys tasked with going through my laptop that was seized. So I asked him what he wanted and why he was calling me. He said they wanted to negotiate with me what I would offer them to get my accounts released and my properties returned. I listened carefully as he continued to ramble on about what they could do to end the matter. The amount they were demanding was $5,000. I laughed and I asked him if he was aware that I already filed a lawsuit and that the case was in a federal high court. He said we could take care of that if we agree on a fee. I told him to shove his offer up his ass and that I would never give them a dime if that is what they are after. I discussed this call with my lawyer and I called the so-called pastor to make sure he wasn't trying to defraud me. We exchanged words and I told him to stay far away from me and my case. On my way to court for another hearing on the following day, I got another call, this time from a former chairman of one of the local government areas in the state. He said he was just returning from Abuja and that my case was mentioned to him when he was at the EFCC's headquarters. He wanted to meet me and discuss what could be done. I told him the case was already in court and that whatever he has to say should be discussed with my lawyer. If it will not help us win in the court, I'm just not interested. My lawyer repeated same to him and he said okay, but I should think about his offer. After 3 months of back and forth in the court, the judge was ready to deliver her judgment. It was a fundamental human rights violation case and the judge sided with me, saying the EFCC had no right to freeze my accounts without a court order. And everything they had said in their defense showed no judge in his right mind would have granted them such an order when there was no evidence to suggest a crime was being committed. Other than the fact that I was too young to have money and my transactions were too much for someone of my age, they had nothing incriminating on me. So she ordered them to release all my properties and also awarded me some damages. I felt good. I was very happy. At least after 3 brutal months of waiting and fighting, I had gotten justice at last, but the wait was just beginning. Rumors started to fly around that I won a 100 million naira lawsuit against the EFCC and 2 giant banks. In fact, someone called me and asked for his share. No kidding. He asked if the money would be disbursed to my account immediately and what was my plan to invest it. I didn't say a word. I gently hung up the call and told my wife, babe, we are leaving this town. I was afraid someone would break into my house because of a rumor. I wasn't given any 100 million naira and I wondered where the story was coming from. I spoke to a few friends and we started planning for my relocation. The legal fees were huge, but considering the relationship I had with the lawyer, it was very fair. Sorry, I can't mention the sum. The banks called me to apologize. They insisted they were working on orders from the EFCC and only did what they had to do to protect themselves. After releasing my accounts, they pleaded if we could negotiate on what they should pay from the damages. I refused and told them to speak with my lawyer. The whole experience had taught me that every business relationship is just what it is, a business relationship, and you should always go with your lawyer. But when everything was beginning to fall in place, I got a call that I was being summoned to appear before the appeal court. The judgment given by the Federal High Court was being disputed by all parties involved. I was frustrated at this point. The money has not even been paid, and now I will have to spend another money to defend the judgment I just got. I started to ask myself if the whole court idea was worth it in the first place. When the appeal court hearing started, my wife had just had a baby, and added to the cost of relocating and settling down in our new place, I was drained. While I was inside, my only remaining YouTube channel was taken down. My business wasn't doing well either. So while the case was over, at least the first one was, and I got my properties released, I was beginning to dance to a different music. This time, the financial implications of my decision to fight a corrupt system. The appeal court dragged out the case from 2019 up until July of 2022. The many filings also meant the bills were piling. When the appeal court justices finally gave their judgment, they upheld the decision of the High Court, but they decided to slash the awarded sum by 75%. This wouldn't even cover half the cost I had incurred for pursuing this case this far. I wept silently. Yes, I was getting judgment. Yes, I was happy this case was finally coming to an end. And yes, I was glad I would finally have closure and find some peace. But how do I pay my bills? This story is very important to me, not because I won the war, but because I lost a lot during the battles. I lost my business. It closed down as there was no funds to keep up with competition. I lost my peace. I woke up every day thinking someone was watching me and waiting to pounce on me. I lost some friendships, all because the case was taking its toll on me. My mental health deteriorated. And to cap it all, I lost the very thing that gave me the money that brought all this attention in the first place. My YouTube channel was taken down. Not for any fault of them, but somehow something within me wants to blame them for all of it. So what next, you may ask? Should I go to the Supreme Court? Will there be a bigger penalty for impunity by law enforcement agents? Did I even get justice? Did I really get justice? Because the agents that did these things to me are still out there. So if you're asking whether or not I am relieved, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. And I really do hope that this doesn't get to happen to anyone else. That's the end of my story, at least for now. Thanks for watching.